I'm Anne-Marie Elias and I'm also known as the Chief Disruptor. So I've spent 30 years in social change. I've worked for all different types of organisations, not-for-profits, government organisations and for ministers. And I ended up working for Council on the Ageing around 2009 or 2008. And I remember I just loved talking to older people that came in for our workshops or events or programs. And I got so many insights from people that had the lived experience. And so that's how I designed programs. And there's two in particular that have been extremely successful and are still continuing today. And today is 2018. So it's no mean feat, and I'm really proud of these initiatives. So I wanted to share how I worked on them and why they're still going on now, 9 years later. So the very first program that I think has been the most successful is a program called Legal Pathways for Older People. And when I used to talk to older people that used to come into Council on the Ageing, they told me that their biggest fear was ending up in guardianship. So I looked at the data, and the data told exactly the same story, that a lot of older people who don't have their affairs in order when they lose capacity, their affairs in order is wills, power of attorney and enduring guardianships. If they don't have those in place when they lose capacity, they go into guardianship of the state. And it's such a nightmare for the older person, for families and for everybody, really. So I listened to that, and then I approached Legal Aid New South Wales and I told them that story, and they concurred that it was a problem in the state, and so they worked with me to look at a solution to this. When I spoke to older people and I said to them, but there is legal aid, why don't you just go there? And they said, oh no dear, because I volunteer at Vinnie's and I'm just not going to go to legal aid. And so then I said, well, why don't you go to a private solicitor? And they went, oh my goodness, no, that's so scary because it could be really expensive and I might not be able to afford it. So I remembered back in the 70s, my mum used to run sessional services. So she used to run services out of different offices. So she used to sit in Centrelink and run services from immigration there because they share customers. So I thought, okay, well, why don't we run a sessional service out of Council on the Ageing where people won't be scared to come because it's a familiar place and they're coming anyway. And we bring in solicitors from legal aid, but also from the Law Society. So that way we cover people that have the capacity to pay private solicitors and the people that don't have the capacity to pay through legal aid. So 9 years on, that program is still running, and I met the current CEO of Council on the Ageing who said she absolutely loves it, that it's been an extremely successful program. I remember in the first year I wrote an article about the program in the senior newspaper, and I had solicitors from all over New South Wales approaching me and saying, hey, well, we could do this in Bega, or I could do this in Nowra. And so the program continues at a statewide level, so I guess you could say it's scaled. But it's sustainable, and that to me is just hugely important. I put my job on the line to push for that program to happen, because I had done about 6 months' work going back and forth and listening to people and talking to Legal Aid and the Law Society and setting up the program. But the board didn't particularly like it, and so I actually said, I will resign. If it doesn't continue, I'll resign because I've spent too much time on it and it's my reputation. So they proceeded, they allowed me to proceed. And so I guess I had the guts to stand up. Now, I don't expect young people to do that because I was already in my late 30s, early 40s at that stage. But I think what's important is that if you've got all the right evidence, you really can stand by your word that this program has to happen. And if you feel that passionate about something, get allies. So I had my CEO as an ally, and I had the people from Legal Aid and the Law Society as allies. So I didn't do it alone, but I'm so glad that that I had that resistance as well, because it made us work harder and develop a memorandum of understanding with those two organisations so that that program could continue.